Hi everyone, I'm Nikki.
And I'm Mike.
And we're on our yacht Zen Again in Gosport Marina in the UK.
It's April 2020 and we're under coronavirus lockdown.
For some time we've wanted to make videos describing our cruising to date.
We've created this YouTube channel for our videos.
This is the first in the initial series of videos, and this series will cover our cruising up to our arrival in the UK.
The series includes videos describing our cruise from Eastern Australia through Southeast Asia to Malaysia, our refit in Thailand and cruise home to Fremantle in Western Australia, and our cruise from Fremantle to the UK via South Africa.
But first we'll cover our sailing history before Zen Again, and then the incredible earlier history of Zen Again.
We hope you like the video. As a teenager I sailed with my family on trailer sailors in the Pilbara region of Western Australia, and while at university refitted and sailed a mirror dinghy. When I moved to the UK I had a topper dinghy and sailed with my uncle Ian on the east coast, Medway and the Thames. Back in Australia I resumed sailing with my family on trailer sailors, and we bought a quarter tonner called Quarterback, which my father and I owned. My father raced it on the river and I raced it offshore. In 1993 I bought a Viking 30, previously known as Botticelli, which I had crewed on. We named it Critical Path, and Nikki and I met in that same year. We started off racing and then gradually moved into cruising. We had that boat for several years. In 1999 we decided to build our dream boat. We had naval architect Malcolm Runnels design a boat for us, and Peter Milner Yachts in Henderson, south of Perth in Western Australia, built the yacht for us. She was intended to be a fast blue water cruiser. She was 38 feet overall. She was fitted out down below for blue water cruising, also for short-handed sailing, and on deck she was fitted out for essentially single-handing, because when this is two of you, you're on watch one at a time. And of course, like all beautiful boats, she was blue. The nav station was interesting. It was all mounted on the aft end of the lifting keel pedestal.
Degrees of Freedom was launched in August 2001, and we spent nearly 5 wonderful years cruising her 1.5 times around Australia. That's 14,000 miles. During this time we sailed from Fremantle up to Darwin via the Kimberley, which was a wonderful but remote cruising ground. And we also spent some time up in far north Queensland, and here we are in the Lockhart River with the giant mangrove trees. We're sailing down the Queensland coast here, so heading for the Whitsundays, where we ended up doing Hamilton Island Race Week, which was a lot of fun.
In 2003 we sailed the boat south to Sydney, and here she is at the CYCA preparing for the Rolex Sydney to Hobart race. We had a crew of sailors from Western Australia who joined us, and here we are at the start. A somewhat gloomy day, but under asymmetric spinnaker heading out of Sydney Harbour. And here we are approaching Tasman Island with the classic organ pipes behind us. Doing the Rolex Sydney to Hobart race was a fantastic event, which we all really enjoyed.
Following the Sydney Hobart, we spent some time cruising around the south coast of Tasmania before striking out for Adelaide in South Australia, and then across the Great Australian Bight to Albany, and then we sailed the boat back to our home in Fremantle, Western Australia. After we reached Fremantle we spent about a year cruising the local area, and we also did a refit on the boat. We'd both got jobs in Canberra on the east side of Australia, so we then sailed the boat back, leaving from Geograph Bay. Then we went around the Capes to Albany on the south coast, then across the Great Australian Bight to Port Lincoln in South Australia, and then along the Victorian coasts via Portland and Port Fairy, finally ending up in Port Phillip Bay, where we did some local cruising for a year. That Christmas we sailed Degrees of Freedom from Melbourne to Tasmania, then up to Sydney, where we made the sad decision to sell her. And this is our approximate track of our time with Degrees of Freedom.
After 2 boatless years in Canberra, we decided to get back into sailing. We bought an Endeavour 24 in Bateman's Bay, and we raced and cruised her there with Bateman's Bay Sailing Club. We really enjoyed it, and after a year we're starting to look for a new boat. Zen Again is an ST 10.4 designed by Ken Hayashi and built by Yamazaki Yachts in 1986 in Japan. Her initial owners were Yoshio and Akami Amanuma, and they sailed the boat from Yokohama across to the west coast of the US, circumnavigated South America, and back up to the Panama Canal and returned to Japan. The Amanumas sailed Shirahei through Patagonia, and these Google Earth images show their approximate path. When they got near Cape Horn, they actually did a day sail out to Cape Horn. This Google Earth image shows their path across the North Pacific and then their return path via Hawaii to Japan. And this shows their path around South America and back through Panama. The Amanumas went on to purchase a larger boat and sail it around the South Pacific, and wrote the first Japanese language cruising guide for the South Pacific. The second owner of the boat was Zen Nishikubu. His nickname was Zen, and he renamed the boat to Zen and repainted her blue. She had originally been white. He sailed single-handed across the North Pacific from Yokohama to Canada, and he is in Victoria on Vancouver Island. He then sailed down the west coast of the US to San Diego and into the South Pacific. He crossed the South Pacific to New Zealand, spent a season there, and then across to Australia. While sailing up the Queensland coast, Zen unfortunately hit a reef at the mouth of the Escape River. He managed to get the boat to Thursday Island, where they established that there was major damage. The boat was put on a barge back to Cairns and hauled out, and you can see the damage here where the leading edge of the keel had pulled out and the trailing edge of the keel had gone into the cabin before relaxing back. Zen put the boat up for sale, and here's the track that he had followed. Zen had repairs carried out in Cairns and then sailed the boat south to Mooloolaba, where it was put up for sale. The boat was bought by drug runners who unsuccessfully tried to import $127 million worth of drugs into Mooloolaba. They were caught and the boat was impounded. Therefore the boat became the property of Her Majesty the Queen for a period. At the end of proceedings, the boat was auctioned and another repair of the keel damage was done. The second repair was done by John Ryan, who owned the boat for 2 years. It was then owned by Rex King, who was based at Royal Queensland Yacht Squadron and raced inshore, and did a Brisbane to Gladstone offshore race. And so in 2010 we bought Zen, and we bought her in Brisbane and sailed her down to Bateman's Bay, where we spent a year sailing with Bateman's Bay Sailing Club and fitting the boat out for further cruising. As part of our process to register the boat as an Australian ship, we renamed her Zen Again, and our future videos will cover our travels, which are summarised by these Google Earth images. This shows us cruising in Southeast Asia, across to Africa and up to Europe, which is where we are currently.
In our next video we cruised from Eastern Australia to Malaysia.
We cruised from New South Wales to Darwin, where we stayed over the cyclone season. From Darwin we cruised through East Timor, Indonesia and Malaysia to Langkawi.
Thanks for watching. If you like our videos, please click to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.